Ms. Fred Indimuli, how hot is the coffee where you are?
Mr. Stanley Jerungeta, I think we should be suing. We should be suing people for damages out here.
That one. Okay.
But anyway, that is how we start your wonderful Wednesday morning. Karibu sana, wherever you are. Despite the whole cold season, we definitely getting it as hot as it is. Matters relationships coming up because it's a Wednesday.
Oh yeah.
Yes, and today we talk about passwords. Umeficha password yako vizuri. Umeka ile, ushaona ile pattern unaka ni kama crossword puzzle.
Lesikia kuna mwingine anatumia fingerprint lakini sasa anatumia toes huko chini. Hakuna vile unaweza ipata.
How about that? That is our conversation today. Matters passwords in a relationship. Should they be there? Should they not be there? But before that, we get into State of the Nation.
Of course, big discussions. Yesterday, I think Raila Odinga threw a spanner in the works. Mambo ya dialogue. Watu wakasema pantaka hiyo.
Nilimwambia actually, anguka nayo.
Anguka nayo.
Anguka nayo.
We'll be discussing that a lot more. Should we be going the dialogue way? On State of the Nation, Titus Lote, MP Kacheliba, Daniel Orogo, political analyst, and engineer Butichi Amisi, a governance expert, will be in studio for this conversation. Do stand by for that. But now,
and because it's also Wednesday, Testy Wednesday, Chef Mike atakuwa hapa hivi. He's an executive chef. So jitayarishe kwa mlo.
Nilikuwa nataka kuona umeandika nini hapo, wanapika nini leo?
Leo ni kuku, by the way.
Oh, kuku?
Yes.
Abas.
Kuku. Rice na kuku za.
You better make sure I get something. On to the dailies, Gen Z backlash. That's a big one on the front page of the Standard. And yes, Gen Z jana walisema anguka na ipantaka. Mpaka nasikia wameandika barua kwenda AU. A Ruto Raila government? That's a question on the Daily Nation today.
Short and precise, another short and precise headline kwenye gazeti la Taifa Leo. Kenya yashuka bei.
Maswala ya mikopo ya Kenya. All right, on the Business Daily, economic backlash widens over finance bill tensions. This is the second time we're seeing the word backlash being used on the main headlines in our dailies today.
On People Daily, Ruto Raila told off.
Jana, by the way, it was It's the first time I think Baba has been told off like that. I've never seen that. I've never seen that.
Gen Zs were like, we love you, but then...
Tulisema ukae home. Azimio split as Ruto hints at unity government. Now, this is a very long headline. I think you can do this in 3 or 2 words. Yes, but yeah, this is the biggest discussion. They're calling it a multi-sectoral forum starting next week.
Starting next week, Monday.
Jina ingine tu ni dialogue. Yeah. So that's as far as the local dailies are concerned. We cross the border.
And you realize that photo of KICC has been used by all dailies, apart from Taifa Leo, but they also mention it. Kwenye gazeti la Daily Monitor, conversations similarly to what is also happening in Kenya. New government jobs rule. Fire before you hire.
And you know what? They should not even have used this line. Just go with fire before you hire, then explain the rest. Because you don't have to tell the whole story. These are very long headlines. But then again, this is a Daily Monitor in Uganda. I'm not telling them how to work. It's just my preference. Yes.
Some of the government has applied brakes on new hiring to fill vacant public service slots so that employees likely to be affected by the ongoing merge of agencies can get assured fresh employment. Wameke hizo numbers hapo.
In matters Graft and Parliament, freedom eludes remanded MPs again. Walikuwa denied bail tena. So the MPs who've been arrested on corruption allegations are still in remand in Uganda.
Still in Uganda, the front page of the New Vision, President orders crackdown and dismissal. So per diem cash, 6 parish chiefs arrested. President of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, is very, very interested to know if you're corrupt in Uganda.
Matters corruption, big news in Uganda. For a while now, they moved on from the budget-making process. Now it's about corruption. If only this could happen in Kenya as well.
The heavy rainfall that was experienced yesterday night and yesterday evening also happened in Uganda. They say hailstorm kills over 200 animals.
Hopefully no human life was lost. Yeah. But yes, 200 animals were lost. Cross the border into Tanzania, gazeti la Mwananchi wasema wanavyolizwa pesa kanisani. And this is a special report about how churches and religion is taking advantage of the masses. It is a big headline on the front page of Mwananchi. Wanasema wasimulia jinsi wanavyolazimika kutoa fedha ambazo huzipata kwa shida kubadilishana na baraka kununua maji, mafuta au vitambaa vya upako. We had a similar problem in Kenya, but it would appear in Tanzania this is a big story. Matters, religion and the masses. It's also the big headline of the Citizen.
How modern day pastors fleece gullible followers. Says in a number of several other countries across Africa, a new breed of fly-by-night religious leaders is emerging in Tanzania and capitalizing on sheer desperation among their followers to amass eye-popping wealth. These modern-day prophets have turned faith into a truly lucrative business.
And you remember this comes at a time when we are still yet to get a final report on what happened at Shakahola.
Actually, today is the second trial. It began yesterday. There's a young girl who appeared for trial, but then the media was not allowed to cover it due to protection matters.
Okay.
So today he is going to face a trial, and I'll be telling you more about that in the diary.
Well, those are the dailies across, not just in Kenya, but across the region. Matters, religion, big headline in Tanzania.
A final paper in Tanzania still, gazeti la Mwanahabari. Away from matters hiyo maneno ya church, waziri mkuu miradi kamilike ianze kutoa huduma. Lakini pale chini, there's a very interesting story. Sama Daktari Mpango apiga marufuku gari za serikali kwenda ba. Sema awaagiza wakuu wa wilaya za mkoa wa Kigoma kufuata maadili ya uongozi katika kutumia magari waliokathibiwa kwa kuleta tija.
Aha.
Yes.
Kuna GK pale nje, but I think in Kenya we've managed to handle this.
GK.
Yeah, you will rarely see it.
Oh, yeah.
It still happens, yes, in some areas, but it's very rare.
So,
yes.
Kuna GK hapo na umeshikilia GK.
Oh, I saw what you did there. All right, those are the dailies this morning. Let's take a look at the traffic situation in Nairobi. Yes, there is an announcement, a notice of planned disruption of Thika Road later today, starting today. Do you have the details?
Yes. So according to KENHA, there is a Kenya National Highways Authority, it announces a 5-day traffic disruption at Juja, a high point along Thika Superhighway. That should be somewhere here. So A2 is this whole road, Thika Road.
Yes, Juja area.
Yeah, so the disruption commences today until Monday, which is the 15th. This is to allow for the construction of the mid-span footbridge foundation.
Just how exactly it will affect Thika Road, we're not so sure. Yeah. But what the information we have, that there will be a disruption of traffic around this general area of Juja on Thika Road to allow for that construction. Let's now get closer to the city, and if we're just flowing with Thika Road, so far so good. The entire road looks green. Even the section at Pangani is green as at now. It's still early, it's 10 minutes past 6, but usually it begins to build up at, around now. There's something here very close to us, but I don't know, probably an incident along Thika Road, along Kiambu Road, but not so sure. Yes, so as far as Thika Road and Kiambu Road, that's how situation is. On Jogoo Road, normal traffic, the usual snarl up there at Makadara, but the entire stretch doesn't look so bad this morning. Actually, it's very friendly. Looking at Haile Selassie Avenue and Landis Road as well, looking green around Marikiti area, meaning it's not as busy as normal. To the southern part of the city, and that's Mombasa Road from Imara Daima all the way past Next Gen, past Capital Center into the city. It's also looking good. So if you're using that road, nothing to worry about. So for the motorists on Langata Road too, looking good. Even this section, what do you call it, Mbagathi Way, all the way to the City Mortuary roundabout, looking good as well. And Ngong Road all the way from Junction, nothing to report about. I think the roads are very empty this morning. And finally, let's take a look at the other major tributary into and out of town, and that is Waiyaki Way. It's looking good past ABC Place, down past Westlands. A bit of a snarl up there just after ABC Place, I think, around Safaricom. But after that, it's clear all the way into town. We do not expect any major incidents in as far as traffic is concerned today in and around Nairobi. So the traffic situation as at 13 minutes past 6 is looking good within the city.
Right, let's see if also the weather is looking good. Yesterday I had given a caution that it might be raining, and well, it actually did.
Squeeze unakuwa prophet now.
Let's start with Nairobi. So we'll take a look at different parts of the country, Nairobi, Nanyuki, as well as Marsabit, and then we go to see what Kenya Meteorological Department has given us as a forecast. Right now it is 14 degrees Celsius. This is expected to get even warmer, but then during the afternoon, probably some 20 degrees Celsius. Warm temperatures might be reducing, so itakuwa ile baridi kidogo despite the warm temperatures.
So no rain in Nairobi today?
No rain, seemingly. In Nanyuki, it is going to be raining actually into the midday, so if you're in that area, make sure that umerusha umbrella ko bag or just have warm clothing as you leave the house today. Or rather, if you're going to be leaving the office around Nanyuki and its environs, make sure that you also dress warmly. Thunderstorms actually, 80% precipitation, that's quite high rainfall. To the north region, 18 degrees Celsius, it is 6 a.m. In Marsabit, and this is the kind of weather they're having. And this is expected to even get warmer than that, 26 degrees Celsius. Let's take a look at a whole focus of what Met Department tells us. So this is a forecast until Monday. There you have it, cumulative rainfall, just the same, even as it was yesterday. Just to remind you the kind of places that you do expect quite the rainfall. So this might be fluctuating depending on even the time. Remember yesterday it had said by afternoon the heavy rainfall is going to be starting in parts of Nairobi and central region, but then ilianza in some parts into the evening. So if you're in central region, millimeters of between 10 to all the way to 50 millimeters. The central region, Kericho, Bomet, Narok as well, also in Nairobi, will be receiving the same. Western region, just about the same also, between 1 to 50. That's between moderate to average rainfall. Parts of Isiolo, Mwingi, Kitui, hakuna mvua huko, according to the Met Department as well. That is what we do expect this morning when it comes to weather. So plan yourself as you leave the house this morning. Something else, even as you now get into the diary, just to tell you what and how you're going to be anticipating how the day is going to be looking like on a news diary as we flip it. So the first off, Maswala, what I was alluding to all the way in Shanzu Principal Magistrate, that is Lea Juma, will continue listening to witnesses in the trial of suspected Kilifi cult leader, that is Paul Mackenzie, till the 11th of July, in a case in which he and 93 others are accused of terror-related issues. So Juma, who is the principal magistrate, will then take a break after the 11th of July for about 11 days and then resume for a 3-day hearing slated for the July 22nd until 25th. So stick around. In our subsequent bulletins, we'll be telling you what will be said from that trial. Moving on, a civil society group, that is Okoa Uchumi, will today give an address on the response to actions taken by executive following the rejection of the finance bill. So also stick around on what this civil society will be saying as well. Into sports matters, today the FKF Women's Cup final and third place playoff is set today at Police Sacco Stadium. Uko Ulinzi Sports Complex. PA, it is going to be a whole fireworks as Police Bullets face Zitex Spurs for the third place, as well as Ulinzi Starlets and Kibera Soccer Ladies play at around 2 p.m. for to see who is going to get the winner's slot. Something else that you also need to know, Treasury Cabinet Secretary, that is Njuguna Ndungu, and IGAD Deputy Secretary Mohamed Ware will be officiating the launch of IGAD Statistics Yearbook. So this, despite that whole technical jargon, we do expect to hear from what Cabinet Secretary Njuguna will be saying concerning about matters economy and this financial year as well. That coming up in our news diary, in our subsequent bulletins, but first, today in history.
On this day, West African heads of state chose Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to be the chairman of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, and the regional bloc for the next year, replacing Guinea-Bissau's leader Umaro Sissoco Embalo.
All right. right, now to the dailies. Let's take a look at and see what the big news is.
Before we even close to the dailies, by the way, on Sunday, they re-elected him as the chair of ECOWAS. So they were expecting to have a francophone country. It was not anticipated that he's going to be the chair.
Tinubu.
Yes, Tinubu.
Who's the president of Nigeria.
Yes, who's the president of Nigeria.
Lakini
akarudi hapo. In Nigeria pia wanasema #reject. Tinubu must go. But anyway, tuingie kwenye magazetini sasa.
Gen Z backlash is a big story on the front page of The Standard this morning. No longer at ease, President William Ruto must have thought signing the IEBC amendment bill at KICC and with the opposition present would placate the protesters. It angered them more. The youth feel those present are the face of war they are fighting, and even the children of the leaders cornered them. And this was very interesting. Even Raila Jr. tweeted and said, you know,
people are individuals.
Yes, even if you share a name, we are different people. Jua hiyo. The presence of military guard in the ceremony made matters even worse. This story is on page 5, and there's this image, and you'll realize this image that they've used here on the front page of The Standard is a common image on most of the dailies this morning, and they're talking about the fact that they were just men. There was no single lady there, no young person there. So there's a lot of quotes on the front page. And this managed to actually eclipse the big story of the day, which was radical changes to IEBC expected to follow soon. These are the stories given prominence on the front page of The Standard. On the back page, key battles as England face Dutch test in the semis. Meanwhile, yesterday, Spain sent off France in the semi-finals. So 2-1. Spain make it to the finals of the Euro 2024 tournament, and the other team that will make it to that final will be decided today when England face the Netherlands. That's The Standard this morning.
On the front page of Daily Nation, the big headline, Ruto Raila government is what they're asking. They are probably asking, is it a handshake too? President William Ruto and ODM Chief Raila Odinga may be planning to form a government of national unity, in quotes. The head of state seeks a way out of the current youth-led protests. Meanwhile, the Azimio coalition faces implosion. Coverage is page 4, 5, and 6. And Fred, you rarely see this gentleman out of KICC. Such a photo is a landmark.
It's also interesting that the president actually made it out of State House. He's not been seen outside State House. I think only on Sunday. He attended church quietly, and then this is the second time we're seeing him this week. He's been actually holed up in State House, probably working on his cabinet.
All right. Other headlines apart from what happened at KICC, also they make a mention of the IEBC new look as it is. Other headlines on the left, rather the right strip, they left me for dead. That is Joshua Okayo narrating his abduction. But then a very interesting story on matters scandal. They say no projects to show for 1 trillion cash shillings loans, and that takes us to the back page. According to Auditor General Nancy Gathungu on the back page, the special audit established that 26 loans were contracted before the respective legal opinions of the Attorney General were received. And the special audit was carried out on loans taken between July 2010 and December 2021. The matters special audit of debt stock ongoing, that is according to a new report. And that, in a nutshell, is the Daily Nation.
Okay. Habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo asema Kenya yashuka bei, ni masuala ya mikopo. Shirika la Moody laonya huenda Kenya ikalemewa kulipa madeni na hivyo itakuwa vigumu kupata mikopo. Wasema huenda Kenya sasa ikanyimwa mikopo baada ya kushushwa hadhi kwenye viwango vya shirika la kimataifa la kutathmini madeni ya mataifa na utoaji mikopo, yani Moody. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa pili, na kuna picha pale ya polisi wakikabiliana na waandamanaji. Habari zingine, vidokezo, wabunge watoka mafichoni. Tumeanza kuona wakirejea. Kwingineko, Uganda ilisaidia M23, yasema UN. Na gani kali, Uholanzi au Uingereza? Masuala ya Euro 2024 ni gani kali?
Inanikumbusha ile nyimbo ya enzi zenu kati ya Man U na Arsenal.
Ni gani kali? Tunajua ni gani kali hadi sasa. Lakini pale juu ile picha ambayo tumeona kwenye magazeti yote mengine, serikali ya muungano yanukia rais akitia saini sheria kuunda IEBC, na kuna picha pale ya viongozi waliokutana pale KICC. Hilo ni gazeti la Taifa Leo.
From Taifa Leo, let's take a look at Business Daily. Economic backlash widens over finance bill tensions. I also mentioned what Moody has said. Moody's downgrades Kenya rating deeper into junk.
Same story as on the front page of Taifa Leo.
Yes. They also go with bond investors offer just 486.5 million cash shillings out of 20 billion cash shillings sought. Other headlines on the bottom, something that was also in the Daily Nation, matters business. DRC now Kenya's fastest growing ESC export. It has overtaken Uganda to become Kenya's fastest growing export market within the East African community. That is according to some new data. On the ticker on the right scroll, capital gains tax hits record 8.38 billion cash shillings. Into matters economy, no projects to show for 1 trillion cash shillings borrowings. That is according to the Auditor General Nancy Gathungu. Kwingineko, matters companies, Safaricom overtakes Airtel in 5G sites rollout. And into matters market insight, shilling extends gain against regional currencies. They say the Kenyan shilling has gained up to 30% of its value against regional currencies, reversing a trend that was witnessed last year. Probably that some good news coming out of some business.
Okay.
Yes, that is Business Daily in a nutshell.
Move on now to People Daily and the big headliner. Ruto, Raila told of this, basically gauging the sentiments online. And they say the youth voice, there can't be dialogue with Gen Z without justice or accountability. The government must take full responsibility of deaths of the young protesters. President must acknowledge that his administration killed innocent demonstrators. That's the voice of the youth, and the story is carried on page 4, and once again an image of this men, the president and other top leaders of the country who met at the KICC. The big discussion was the big event was meant just to sign the IEBC bill, but lots more came out of there, and it resulted in a lot of anger, especially among the youth on social media. One piece of news that has not been captured on any other daily is on the front page of the People Daily today. Up there, 9 killed after Migori mine collapse. The story is on page 13. Yes, administrator says at least 15 miners were inside this gold mining site.
Chopper, gold
It's called
mine.
Chopper.
Yeah,
which is about 600 feet deep when one of the shafts caved in. But 6 of them were rescued by colleagues and taken to hospital. It is a sad state of affairs there in Migori, as 9 people lost their lives. Yes, as it is for England, yes, a mention of the Euro 2024 semi-final today between Miamba, England and the Netherlands. The kickoff is at 10 p.m. So yes, that's the People Daily this morning.
From People Daily to the Stars, Azimio splitters Ruto hints at unity government. Say Raila Odinga's ODM considering working with Kenya Kwanza in new coalition. Say not as opposition's Karua, Kioni, Eugene Tam move and Trump, and they insist that they are not boarding. And they have that very historic photo there. You rarely see this kind of a photo with both political sides mixed up together like that. But other highlights are focused. So you remember this story, the British man who came to Kenya. They say he's been stranded. He wired 15 million cash shillings to his quote-unquote love. Now he's stranded in Kenya.
Okay.
Wow. Another story that the Star has resurfaced. I think last week they had said an EU official was sent away from Kenya due to the whole wash saga, that Kenya had been implicated. And now they call it an espionage. New Twister State says deported top EU official is a spy and working against Kenya. Right, we yet to see how that will be unfolding. Another headline that hasn't been focused on other front pages. On defense, no cash lent irregularly, says Hustler Fund top executive after audit. I think the Star was one that also had a similar headline some days ago about Hustler Fund and its irregularities. Finally, pale juu masuala ya afya. Afya House and Doctors Union failed to agree on interns posting. Say demands not met. And that is the stand. That takes us to the cartoons this morning. Interestingly, I think all of them have the caricatures of either Azimio leader Raila Odinga
or the president.
Ruto.
And the discussion is just the same about what exactly happened yesterday at the KICC. On the Star, and I think there's the cartoon there, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different frames of Raila Odinga, the Azimio leader, and his relationship with all the presidents. It begins with his relationship with Daniel Moi, then it moved to Mwai Kibaki, then Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto, and now what will happen with the Gen Zs? He's saying dialogue. It's been dialogue all this time, from when he dialogued with President Moi till today.
From the Star to People Daily, Star News take, I mean, still the same conversation. The caricature of the president there with that, it's probably a mousetrap. So Ruto talks, and there's a very beautiful basket of fruits. Rutox, I love the play of words they've gone with. And Gen Z are somewhere there, just in front of this trap, protesting. You can see I am
very defiant.
Yes.
On the front, on page 12 of the Standard, the cartoon there by Gamzo. And it has, the commentator says, Anguka nayo. So the Gen Z revolution is this huge elephant in the room, but these two leaders are talking about the IEBC law down here, and the commentator down there says, Anguka nayo. I think that's my best cartoon.
Oh yes, you're going to love it.
But then on page 13 of the Daily Nation, there's a phone call between the two. Of course, there's Gen Z fire on the table, and then a caricature of the president making a call. And on the desk, he has a proposal for a handshake. And then he says, Baba, I need analog solutions to obvious issues. Yes.
Is it technical?
No, but you see, basically what they're saying.
Digital solutions as you work.
As you work, amejaribu hizo mpya, turudi tu zile za baba. Very analog.
Adili ya kuingia kwa X spaces nini?
Wapi? Anguka nayo. Well, those are the cartoons today, and we'll be looking at some of these issues with my panelists this morning. Nakumbuka kuna mmoja wanasema kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo kuna habari wanasema wabunge watoka mafichoni. Tutaona kama kutakuwa na mbunge hapa studioni leo wakishatoka mafichoni. Titus Lote, Mpika Chiliba should be in studio today alongside Daniel Orogo and Engineer Butichi Hamisi. Do stand by for that as we take a look at the big conversation today. The Gen Z revolution vis-a-vis what happened yesterday at the KICC. You can be part of this conversation online on X at TV47 News and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. You can always tag me at Fred Indimuli on X.
And Ringita _ on X. And 22047 is our SMS number. 0793 267 279 is our WhatsApp number. Coming up at around 8, we have relationship conversations. We're asking you, should spouses share phone passwords? That is our conversation today. Matters privacy versus transparency. Nasim Katha, as well as Dr. Julius Kimani, will be joining us for that. Alafu jitayarisha anza kutafuta mavitungu nini, because we're going to be cooking rice na kuku later on to the tail end of the show. You're watching Morning Cafe, usibanduke.
Kila kiongozi ana hadithi yake ya kipekee.
Wazazi wangu walikuwa bit strict kwa sababu mamangu mwenyewe, mimi kutoka kuzaliwa sijailala nje.
The white small one, huyo ana sniff gunpowder na risasi na bomb. Alafu huyo mwingine ni ridgeback ana sniff simba.
Even the employees knows that, so when in the boardroom is the chairman, the CEO, And the rest
At
of
what point are you a wife?
the minute you get to that inside that door, you become now the wife.
Na kila maamuzi wanayoyafanya hufichua mengi kuhusu utu wao na uongozi wao.
We see God blessing us, and we now realize the power of giving also has to be rewarded back.
Kupitia kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, tunakuletea mahojiano ya kusisimua na uchambuzi wa kina kuhusu viongozi wetu.
Pick your core business as the bigger stones. Put them in your diary first. Give priority the bigger things.
Usikose kila Alhamis saa 1:30 jioni.
In a world where challenges are as common as opportunities, there are those who dare to defy the odds. They are the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship isn't just about starting a business. It's about embracing uncertainty, pushing boundaries, and turning dreams into reality.
Hata ambao ni pesa ya kusave, wallahi. Ambao mwaka ni pesa nyingi sana.
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
The way we run the business is in a very unforgiving way, where every team member has to bring out their best.
So, to all the dreamers, innovators, and risk takers out there, remember, being an entrepreneur isn't just a job, it's a way of life. Join the journey. Become an entrepreneur. The Grind, Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Here on Beyond the Limit, we celebrate the extraordinary achievements of individuals who redefine possibilities. In a journey of resilience and determination, these individuals demonstrate that limitations are merely stepping stones to greatness.
I'm Nancy Njoroge, a mother of 3. I have 2 girls and a boy who is Clinton and who is autistic.
When my heart got healed, I decided to come out to be creating CP awareness, to let other people know that there is such a condition, and people that has it is not that they are witches.
Together, let's go beyond the limit every Saturday at 8 p.m.
Welcome to The Realtor, where we take you on an exciting journey from bare land to dream home. Step 1. Finding the perfect plot. We explore location, size, and potential. Next, construction begins. Witness the foundation being laid, walls rising, and rooms taking shape. Step 3. Electricity matters. We delve into wiring.
All right, Anguka Nayo. That's, I think, motto this morning. It's even on a cartoon. That's exactly how we started the show this morning. Karibu sana, this is a morning cafe. State of the Nation on TV 47. My name is Fred Indimuli. We now want to take a look at the headlines. And on the front page of the People Daily, of Taifa Leo, kuna kidokezo kimoja pale, asema wabunge watoka mafichoni. Wamekuwa wapi? Nina mbunge moja hapa kwenye studio, Titus Lote, MP Kachiliba, karibu sana. It's good to have you in studio.
Thank you.
It's been a while. And this general sentiment is that members of the National Assembly have been in hiding. Is that a fact?
Well, I don't think that is true because there's a lot of negativity now about the members of parliament, and especially after the voting. So there's a lot of hogwash, throwing of words here and there. Members of parliament have not disappeared. We've actually seen them in churches. We've actually seen, despite the fact that they have been asked not to go to churches, we've actually seen them in burials. We've seen them apologizing. We've actually seen some apologizing. And so they have been present everywhere. Mm-hmm. The only thing is that because of the negativity that is affecting the members of parliament, such statements are welcomed that they disappeared, but I don't think, I personally was in my constituency. I've traversed my constituency. I've also gone to other functions outside my constituency. Yes. And so we are available. And I think members of parliament are available everywhere.
Because what many people are saying is that you lit a fire by bulldozing the Finance Bill 2024. And when things went overboard, you left the president without anyone around him. The president has been appearing like a very solitary figure until yesterday when he had to come out, and we now see very many new faces around him, faces that have not really been there with him. But members of Kenya Kwanza, especially after bulldozing the Finance Bill 2024, they've not been seen with the president after that.
Well, it will be wrong for us to say that the Finance Bill was bulldozed, because the way the finance bills have been done, year in, year out, is that there is a proposal from government, and then there is a counter proposal from the citizens of Kenya. And that's why the Constitution has provided us with that opportunity. So when the proposal from government came, the citizens gave their counter proposal. And some of the things that were countered by the citizens include the removal of the taxes on bread, removal of taxes of border, removal on taxes on issues to deal with the charges, the mobile telephone transfer charges. All those were actually aspects that even the members of parliament did not agree with. I did not agree with it myself. But then when those counter proposals were considered, and I remember the Kenya Kwanza, I am not part of it, but the Kenya Kwanza administration, the Kenya Kwanza members of parliament went and met the president, and they were able to talk and said, well, we've listened to the counter proposal from the public, and we are going to remove those things that are punitive. So when they were removed, the voting went on, and members of parliament were convinced that what remained for that finance bill was able to go.
Despite serious public outcry?
There was the serious public outcry was on issues to deal with bread, the cost of fuel, the cost of electricity, transfers of mobile money, those things that I've talked about.
The uproar back then was, they were saying reject.
They were saying reject, and I'll tell you, sometimes when you trump up people to levels where emotions become more than reasoning, you expect people to say reject in totality. And I'll tell you this, I actually saw a young man, when the finance bill was rejected by the president, the young man was on the street and said, we cannot be on the same place with the president. So because the president has said reject finance bill, then we want the finance bill introduced. So at that level, we are not talking about reasoning any longer. We are now talking about emotional mobilization, which I'll tell you, once you emotionally mobilize people, reason is actually swept under the carpet.
One of the other concerns is the fact that the National Assembly decided to go on recess, leaving the country in crisis at a time when the country is in crisis, because we look at the other house, the Senate, which was also set to debate a possible motion on adjournment, refused to adjourn. They said the country is in crisis right now, it is not the best time to go on recess. Why would the National Assembly be in recess at a time when the country is definitely in crisis?
Well, there are two things in this. First of all, the National Assembly operates on a calendar, and the calendar comes out a year before. So a year before, if you go to the National Assembly archives, you can actually see a calendar that actually stipulates that the National Assembly will go onto a recess for 2 weeks.
Isn't it the same for the Senate? They also have a calendar.
It is, and that's why I say there are two things. The first thing is that was accepted. And so the National Assembly actually had to operate within its calendar. Two, the National Assembly is not bound to always follow that calendar if there are things of exigencies. And so at the level when the National Assembly was adjourning, that is the point, that was on that Tuesday when the Gen Zs went into Parliament, and then there was an adjournment. The day after that, actually the adjournment was supposed to take place on Thursday, and Parliament debates on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. But Parliament ran all the way to Thursday, and you remember, even when Parliament was actually passing issues to allow KDF to probably operate on. So Parliament operated on its calendar as it stipulated. So there was nothing wrong to put Parliament to continue when their calendar had accepted them to actually go on a recess.
Yet we've seen before that Parliament has even been recalled from recess, especially the National Assembly, when it is required of them to attend to matters of national importance. Even some key bills that probably are time-bound, and it's necessary for them to come on a debate and amend. How come? Didn't you feel that probably, and probably it's not really your responsibility, probably it's up to the Speaker, don't you feel that probably this time around this crisis warranted such kind of action, a recall of members from recess?
Well, I think when you talk about a recall basically means that members have actually gone on recess, then they are asked to come back. And we expect that to happen now, because immediately when the President rejected to sign the finance bill, it was supposed to come back to the House. And so that was a week ago. So we expect now a recall probably this week for us to come and actually do that, because there is a time position that members are supposed to actually act on that rejected finance bill, so that something else can take place. And you remember the President say, I'm going to go back to Parliament so that they can approve a bill of 177 billion, down from 400 and something. And then he said he will go and actually probably look for money from loans to be able to capture for the others.
So as it is
recall of Parliament is something that has operated, and recall basically means members have gone and then members can come back. So we expect that to happen.
Out of necessity, probably, don't you think that week where members have stayed away and the Senate decided not to follow suit and also adjourn, that probably there would be a situation that if at all the National Assembly was there, it would have given the nation some bit of confidence in some of even the pronouncements by the President. For example, the rejection of the Finance Bill 2024 is still just a memo by the President. That still has to be executed by members of the National Assembly. It is yet to be done.
We will definitely execute it. We're actually waiting for the Speaker to call.
It could go either way, because up till now, Kenyans do not really know the fate of the Finance Bill 2024, apart from the President's rejection.
I don't think the President was hoodwinking Kenyans when he said that he's rejecting it. And I don't think the members of Parliament are going to be very insincere and burying their heads in the sand from what is happening. I think we're all aware that this finance bill has been rejected by the majority of the Kenyan citizens, and that the Kenyan citizens want something better than that. And I think it is upon the members of Parliament to actually correct that. So it will not, and it is not wrong for members of Parliament to go back to Parliament and be able to do this. And I expect that to happen. I am sure the recall is going to take place, despite the fact that the recess was only going to be for 2 weeks. So I'm 100% sure that in the course of this week or next week, Parliament is going to reconvene, and Parliament is going to give justice to the people of Kenya by also looking into this Finance Bill 2024.
Given the events that happened just before you went on recess as members of the National Assembly, a breach of the perimeter fence, and protesters getting into the compound of Parliament buildings, do you think that that's an indictment in itself of the conduct of Parliament, especially the National Assembly, which by passing the Finance Bill 2024 really act the masses leading to the protest? Don't you think that that in itself is an indication of a lack of confidence in the National Assembly?
Well, I can say both ways. It can be, and it can also not be. Objectively, the Gen Zs had an agenda, a very clear agenda in terms of what they wanted the members of National Assembly, they wanted the government, including the opposition, to operate on. And so they were agitated. And this thing started way before the finance bill started. You actually had the aspects of reject starting all the way before the finance bill. And reject has continued even after the finance bill. So I cannot really say, because members of Parliament passed the finance bill, it basically means that it's an indictment about the members of Parliament. Because even after then this thing has been rejected, why is the term reject going on? It basically means that it's something that is beyond the members of Parliament, because what the members of Parliament are accused of is them passing the finance bill. But after that, why are we still seeing the aspects of reject? So basically, the fact that the young men went through the fence of Parliament and even accessed Parliament, including the chamber, basically tells you the members of parliament, the members of the public is angry about parliament on finance bill, but they are also angry about the government beyond the finance bill. So it is not an indictment only on the members of parliament.
But to some extent it is a show of lack of public confidence on members of the National Assembly.
Extremely. To some extent it is, but to the large extent is not. Yeah.
Because it is unprecedented. We've not seen members of the National Assembly scamper for safety before within the precincts of Parliament. This time around it happened. Are you concerned about your safety now that you even say you anticipate the National Assembly to be recalled? Are you concerned about your safety?
Well, I think issues of safety for every Kenyan is a concern at all time, whether you have security or you don't have security, whether you are at home or you're at work. Security is paramount every single time. And so everybody is concerned about its security, and Parliament as an institution is also concerned about its security. The businessmen are also concerned about their security. The government are concerned about this, including you individually concerned. So I would not say that now we should not be concerned about our security, and it's not just because of what happened, and it's not going to be also because of what is going to happen.
Do you have any special concerns?
Security concerns for every Kenyan is a paramount.
Do you have any special concerns as you return, as you anticipate to return to the House?
Of course, I'll say that for every incident that happened, people then have a counter incident, and people have a mechanism of being able to deal with that incident. And I think for the first time, there's never been a time where the members of public has been able to access Parliament in such a forceful manner to let members of Parliament scamper and go into a bunker. This is the first time. And I think now there are contingencies. The security experts are also trying to see how best we can be able to protect the members of Parliament, and Parliament in particular, from such incidents from happening in future. Because we cannot say that now it has happened, so it will not go to happen again. It might happen again because history, sometimes they say, repeats itself. So I'm sure that Parliament is going to be concerned about its security. Parliament is going to put more stringent measures in terms of how to protect Parliament from such incidences. But I think individually, even individuals at their own capacity, there needs to be concern. You've seen what happened to the business people in town. You saw in Mombasa, some guy was actually shooting the protesters in protection of his business. So I think even now, beyond just you being given a licensed gun, probably something needs to be done beyond that. Okay. You remember, some time ago when we used to transfer money from one bank to another one without an escort, and then there were incidences where people would hijack these vehicles, after which there was a law that every vehicle that transports money should be escorted, and we've seen that becomes now a law in this country.
So,
and I believe
you anticipate that probably more guns within Parliament?
I will not say it's more guns. Probably there will be something beyond guns. Probably there is going to be construction of a perimeter wall, or probably electrifying the whole place, or probably having more security people. So I do not really, I'm not a security expert, but I'm sure there's something that is going to be done beyond what I've actually been done before.
Allow me to welcome to the panel Daniel Orogo, political analyst, looking sharp. Good morning, karibu sana.
Good morning. My apologies for arriving late, but it's good to be in the panel this morning as well.
Yes, we were just...
me as well again. I was concerned about his security as well.
You know, even on the front page of Taifa Leo, they're saying, wabunge watoka mafichoni.
Yeah.
And now the concern has been that these members of Parliament are concerned, and rightly so, after the events we saw in Parliament during the protests, that they are concerned about their safety. They've stayed away even at a time when Kenyans expect the National Assembly to be in session because the country is in crisis.
Yeah.
And we're just looking at the conduct of Parliament during this time. The Senate senators refused to discuss a possible motion for adjournment. Yet members of the National Assembly were quick to adjourn and go into mafichoni, as Taifa Leo say. Don't you think that probably that in itself, having National Assembly in recess during such a time, leaves the country at a higher risk?
I think it's rightfully so that first let me agree that to guarantee the security and safety of the members of Parliament as to any Kenyan is something that is paramount, and I agree to that extent that members of Parliament or any other leaders or public servant or even Kenyans who are doing business on the streets must be safely secured and assured that their businesses can be conducted without interruption. demonstration without threat to lives and destruction of property. So I think that it needs, it's a basic understanding that that really needs to guarantee. I think secondly, it also comes to fore to understand then why were we there in the first place, you could see this has risen a lot of safety, but even as it arises a lot of safety measures, one of the things that you have to keep we have to keep understanding is that by the moment that we the leaders did not listen to the people, and there is no at all anybody who would approve the conduct of the public as opposed to touching down the parliament, as opposed to bridging the parliament. That is for sure. But again, we are looking at what are the push factors that led the public to engage in such an outrage? And I think those are the things that we probably at the bare minimum really needs to mitigate and discuss. Some of them will go to policy-wise, some of them will be looking at...
Do you have questions about the confidence that Kenyans have in the National Assembly going forward?
I mean, Fred, if there is one thing we have been discussing on this set is the quality of representation, all through, even before we saw that kind of skirmishes there. We have been here, and my colleagues and even some members of parliament have agreed with us, asking that, has the House really become a place of debate and a constructive conversation that is geared towards helping Kenya to where it is? And we've assessed that differently on this particular panel, saying that, look, the composition of Parliamentary itself, we agree that there's so many members, over 290 members, and not all of them can contribute to the House. But as well, we are looking at then what is the quality of representative. That has gone effect itself. Beyond that, then, we must have voices. And the other time, we were having a very contested debate here with a member of Parliament, I think from Kiambu, where we were saying that, you see, at least we are looking at an alternative voice, an objective voice in the floor of the National Assembly, that even is cross-political, that is cross-interest-based, that would be able to look keenly and interrogate what is tabled, that Mwananchi can itself, align themselves with. So, while we have a parliament that is based on tyranny, while we have a parliament that is based on majority of numbers, then we lose a conversation. And this is why Kenyans felt that since our delegated power is no longer working, the Constitution as well is giving us power to represent ourselves, by ourselves. And the only thing we can see is to merge and frog ourselves to the National Assembly and make our voices, be heard. I think that is in the skirmishes that now turned violent. Fred, let me appreciate that. There are a number of conversations about the methods that were used with our protesters. Remember last time you asked a question, do you think the Kenyan public can go off screen to the street? You asked me that question in the, and I told you, Fred, as things are going, it seems that we saw. That was contested. But I told you, even as things sharpen up, it seems Kenyans are going to the streets, and you couldn't agree. You couldn't agree that their activation was passive. But indeed, it was less than two months, and then we saw Kenyans moving in the street to protest. We've had stories that even our neighbors, this has caused a lot of regional, a lot of regional uprising. Ugandans want to go to protest and express their views to their members of parliament. Ghanaian parliament, you could see the videos making rounds on social media. They're urging their members of parliament, please pass the bills that are people-driven. Because if you don't do that, our fate is what we saw in CNN happening in Kenya. So it's general lessons to learn all of us.
I asked you a question about the absence of the National Assembly at a time when the country is in crisis. Do you think that's the right thing to do?
Well, that's what I've said. Prevailing circumstances, they're human beings. Prevailing circumstances sometimes, so
it's a genuine concern.
Honorable, it is a general concern about their leaders, first of all. Let's agree, their leaders, their parents, they're human beings. That their security must be guaranteed as to any other Kenyans. But I think one of the things we need to do is, even as things come down, I think we need to reconvene the parliament. Because there are some of these particular thorny policy measures that parliament has to canvass right as we speak. Otherwise, it's going to be a constitutional crisis. It's going to be a political crisis.
I want us now to, I don't know, do we have a scheduled break for 7? We could take an early break, then we come back. Okay, let's continue. Let's now focus on the big discussion, the big debate after yesterday's event at the KICC. The event was basically to sign into law the IEBC bill. providing a way forward on the reconstitution of the electoral body. But it turned out into something else. And you look at the dailies today, the standard Gen Z backlash. People are simply saying no to the kind of images we are seeing on the front pages. On the Daily Nation, it's a question: a Ruto Raila government? So I'm informed we have a break, so let's take that break and come back to take a look at these dailies, because even on the Star, Azimio split as Ruto hints at unity government, and on the People Daily, Ruto Raila told off. This will be discussing after the break. You're watching Morning Cafe.
With Insurance Regulatory Authority. Diseases and accidents can occur suddenly and when least expected. If this occurs to you or your dependent,
Kila kiongozi ana hadithi yake ya kipekee.
Wazazi wangu walikuwa bit strict kwa sababu mamangu mwenyewe, mimi kutoka kuzaliwa sijailala nje.
The white small one, huyo ana sniff gunpowder na risasi na bomb. Alafu huyo mwingine ni ridgeback ana sniff simba.
Even the employees knows that. So when in the boardroom is the chairman, the CEO, and the rest of.
At what point are you a wife?
The minute you get to that inside that door, you become now the wife.
Na kila maamuzi wanayoyafanya hufichua mengi kuhusu utu wao na uongozi wao.
We see God blessing us, and we now realize the power of giving also has to be rewarded back.
Kupitia kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, tunakuletea mahojiano ya kusisimua na uchambuzi wa kina kuhusu viongozi wetu.
Pick your core business as the bigger stones. Put them in your diary first. Give priority the bigger things.
Usikose kila Alhamis saa 1:30 jioni.
in a world where challenges are as common as opportunities, there are those who dare to defy the odds. They are the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship isn't just about starting a business, it's about embracing uncertainty, pushing boundaries and turning dreams into reality.
Hata mbao ni pesa ya kusave. Wallahi. Mbao mwaka ni pesa nyingi sana.
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
The way we run the business is in a very unforgiving way, where every team member has to bring out their best.
So, to all the dreamers, innovators, and risk takers out there, remember, being an entrepreneur isn't just a job, it's a way of life. Join the journey, become an entrepreneur.
Welcome back. This is the Morning Cafe, State of the Nation with me, Fred Indimuli on TV 47. Gen Z Backlash is a big headline on the front page of the Standard. And that's what we want to look at now with Titus Lotem, Pika Chiliba, and political analyst Daniel Orogo. Gentlemen, if you look at the cartoons today, and you have the dailies, of course, apart from Anguka Nayo, there's another message being passed. On the page 12 of the Standard, the elephant in the room is a Gen Z revolution, but there are two gentlemen talking about the IEBC law down there, and the commentator says Anguka Nayo. A clear contrast in as far as the discussions are concerned. But on page 13 of the Daily Nation, the cartoon talks about a discussion between these two leaders. That's President William Ruto and the Azimio leader Raila Odinga. And the president appears to be saying, Baba, I need analog solutions to obvious issues. And this, I think, is a cartoon that has captured the disconnect between what the political class are talking about and what the protesters or the younger generation are keen to discuss. Let's start from there. All the dailies suggest a possible unity government or a handshake of some sort, a coming together of the opposition and the ruling class. This, we've seen before this script, Bwana Titus Lote. We've seen the script before, and even it has been captured on one of the cartoons, yes, on the Star, that Raila Odinga has done this with President Moi, with President Kibaki, with President Uhuru Kenyatta, even with President Ruto himself. And the question is, will his suggestion of dialogue with the Gen Zs work this time round? On the Daily Nation, it has suggested that probably analog solutions would work. Do you agree with this kind of approach, Bwana Lote?
Well, one thing that I'll say is that dialogue in this country has worked. And one of the persons that I'll say has transversed all political lives in this country is Honorable Raila Odinga, the former Prime Minister of this country. And this guy, I think, is the greatest politician that we have in this country. He's actually been with Moi. He had dialogue with Moi. He's been with Kibaki. He's been with Uhuru. And now he's now actually seemingly going to be with Ruto. And I don't think Raila is selfish. Many people have said Raila is selfish, but I think Raila has always been considering the national good vis-a-vis the personal good. And people will always look at Raila as a person who is self-seeking, that is seeking for himself. But I think every time Raila has come to the fore of dialogue, Raila is actually looking at how this country is going to be saved from the brink of collapse. You can remember very well in 2007, where Raila victory was actually taken away by the late Kibaki. At that point, everybody was agitated. People who were actually pro-Raila were agitated. But I think it reached a point where Raila just said, okay, fine, gentlemen, it's not about me, it's about this country. Let's sit down and have a discussion. We've actually seen that during Moi's time, when Moi was a tyranny in this country, and people thought Raila going to start discussing with Moi and having a government running together with Moi, Raila was selfish. But I think Raila knew that if I go up to this point, I'm going to avert this country from dictatorship. And based on that, we were able to remove the Section 2A, the constitution that now brought in the multi-party. Raila played a key role. And I think for every handshake, and I will want to castigate people who are trying to look at Raila as a person who is self-seeking. Raila looks at the common good, the good of this country. Raila does not seek for himself. Otherwise, then this is a person that has suffered politically through history for the purposes of this country.
You've been among those who challenged probably the handshake between Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta and said that probably it was part of the reason why we had so many economic problems towards the end of 2022.
No, I don't think Raila brought any economic problems that we've got. I know there are many people that have castigated, and the reason why I've said we need to look at Raila not as a person that is self-seeking. Raila is seeking for the good of this country. Okay. There is a reason, I will always believe, that there's a reason why Raila will say let's handshake. He's the one person that is always, is a real politician that does not hold grudges. He does not hold a permanent position. He's a person that looks at the dynamics of everything. So for me, I'll say, rightly, if Raila was able to be a politician during Moi's time, if Raila was being a politician during Kibaki's time, during Uhuru's time, Raila is the same politician that can be given a chance, because through his fights as an individual, we've actually seen this country transform. Raila has actually been a person that has ensured that everything that we enjoy, including what the agencies are enjoying now, the Constitution, Raila played a role in that. And so I will say, let us try to look at the wisdom that this old man has. This person should be having a wisdom that has really protected this country from collapsing. We will have collapsed during Moi's time.
Ruto Raila government, that's a question on the front page of the
well, I don't
agree with that kind of approach.
I would really want to say, let us not try to always read beyond what, because sometimes we become sentimental, sometimes we become sensational. What we saw yesterday was that these people just came and they signed into law a report that was started last year. National Dialogue Committee started this thing way before we had the agencies. And they actually had a report which was supposed to be signed, and it was between those, the opposition and the ruling coalition. And this is what they came yesterday to do. And I thought, basically, after the signing, what Ruto said is that we're going to have a discussion about the national unity. He did not say that we are going to have a government that is being formed. Let us wait until we see that. Otherwise,
could all these dailies be wrong? Even on the Star, as Mio split, as Ruto hints at unity government. Could they all be wrong?
There is an hinting. You know, when they say we end, it doesn't mean that there is a unity government. And I want to say, let us not try to sensationalize. At this point, as a country, let us look at what is there. What is there before us is that we've actually seen that they have signed into law now the formation
and that should have been the headline.
And that is supposed to be the headline.
That should have been the
that
headline.
We have now perverted. We have actually perverted our thinking to levels where we start to look at things that are beyond, that is going to sensationalize Kenyans to believe that the government is going on the wrong direction. Let us just look at exactly what happened. And what happened yesterday is we have had the signing of a document that was started way into 2023.
Okay. Daniel Orogo, do you agree with the assessment by the member of the
Definitely no. Definitely no. I think Honorable Lotte, Kenyans are not perverted in their thinking. Kenyans have learned the same script throughout political history, what has been happening to the country. And as you have accounted to, the strategies and the post-election agreements of the political party canvassing that has been done by Honorable Raila Odinga, it is the same and it was expected. I am just surprised that we were all surprised that this was going to happen. Number one, would we then appreciate, as Honorable Lotte has mentioned, the selfless sacrifices that Honorable Raila has done to this country? That is, it is non-contested. It is, you know, we all agree the personal sacrifices that he and his family has gone through in terms of trying to emancipate Kenyans through, you know, the shackles of dictatorship in a constitution and government that was, you know, ruling with impunity. And that we agree. We have also agreed that he is an embodiment of democratic ideals. That his speech, his action, his conduct throughout the political history has been a semblance of somebody who believes that democracy can be entrenched in our governance system and it can yield, you know, into a result that we have as a stable democratic republic of this country. I am at pains always explaining to my colleagues in different platforms that we seem not to be learning that the demographics, the constituency of the potential voters for 2027 are very different from what we are seeing now. And you see, I'm at pains telling people that this particular generation of leaders or so-called constituency of young people who have called themselves tribeless, leaderless, or leaders with impact have decided that they want to overhaul a whole political system. And that is being seen. This particular constituency in demography have said that when you come to a dialogue, it is a dialogue with an open hand, that there is no hidden initiative under the table. It seems we still don't get it. We still don't understand. And that is why, before we went for break, we were explaining that never in our history have we had people who have the confidence to go to parliament and face security in terms of protesting their rights to be heard. Never in our history have we had a sustained demonstration of people who are turning up on a weekend, people who are not paid to demonstrate, people who are cross-tribeless, going to express their view in terms of solidarity on Sabbath. Never have we got in this particular history. Never have we have a social political movement that is purely mobilized in spaces, that is purely driven on social media, you know, TikToks and the rest, and they are turning out from screens and they are going to the streets. Never have we had this kind of demographic. So people who are knowledgeable. You know, we can easily dismiss this particular generation not to be understanding process until you have a conversation with them and listen how they understand those processes. Fred.
Do you think Raila got it wrong?
You understand? I'm coming there. We've had these particular people, even as much as breaking down a finance bill. You've been to those Twitter spaces. In 5 minutes, someone has explained a finance bill in a way that you understand. You've not been understanding as it has been explained in the screens with the expert, but this generation can break it down for you to understand. Now, I am faulting this particular move. One, because I am seeing in a clear terms, and it's documented here on our papers, this generation acknowledged the efforts that Honorable Raila Odinga did. You remember one of the young ladies who told Baba, please sit home. Can we now pick up from where you live? Let us clean, now rest. Whatever you are doing, now we understand why we have to do it. In a clear terms, they were telling Baba, please, now we have acknowledged the democratic ideals you did. But because of what you've done, now let us further it. Let us clean this let us make this political system hygienic. They asked Baba to do so. And Baba appreciated that. I think you can remember in one of the posts, being proud that a generation and young people, not from a man, but a young girl, who understand the importance of civic engagement. So I think from what happened yesterday, one, there's a big political mistake. And I can tell you this for guaranteed. One, we didn't understand that a process that was before was bipartisan. That was discussed by one political function disagreeing with other political functions. And I have been on this set saying we need a broad-based national conversation. Beyond the political conversation. Now, again, another mistake that has been done is praying the reference to NADCO report. Do you understand? In the form where the head of, executive, who is the head of state, is extending a hand and requesting that we are having over 100 for national dialogue, and requesting this young generation, please choose your people, and then go ahead to make a reference on a report that was done by partisan, that excluded the very young people that are being invited on the table. These are political mistakes that we are making. And so Baba, one of the things I urge Baba is, when he's watching us, to understand that we are dealing with a purely different generation of our demographics. And by the way, this is going to be sustained. I see them now pointing a finger on reforms of IEBC. Now, the political class have rushed, but they're using NADCO report to clean IEBC, not a dialogue of inviting these people. This is a political mistake.
This game is different, Bonalote. The fact that now this generation is lumping the entire political class into one and saying we are saying no to you. It is the very first time we are hearing many people come out and say no to Raila Odinga, for example. Don't you think that probably this gentleman got it wrong yesterday in the pronouncements they made, including the formation of that multi-sectoral forum for about 150 people, where they said the young people should give about 50 of their own?
Well, I want to say, first of all, that yesterday, the key event yesterday, is only that we do not want to look at that event.
It's there on the front page, I think somewhere down here.
The key event yesterday was about the signing into law one of the 8 recommendations by the NADCO. That signing was the key thing that brought these people together. It is not about the bipartisan talk that is about to start, or whatever, the formation, or anything, or discussion, all those kind of discussion.
Do you think that that announcement was misplaced at yesterday's event?
Whatever name that comes out of that, what is critical yesterday, which I think we need to be appreciative of the fact that the year before last year, 2022, there was a contestation on the elections. And one of the things that came out very clearly from the opposition was that we need to actually look at the audit of that election, because every year we've got an issue about elections. So that is what brought in the NADCO, and there was an agreement from both sides of the house that you bring a people that are representing you, the opposition bring a people that represents them, and they sat down. They actually sat down and they listened to many Kenyans. And so by the time we say that we did not bring in the young people, I think every Kenyan was invited, and Bomas was open. There were submissions in thousands, written submissions. There were physical submissions. And these people went even beyond Bomas. They went to constituencies, they went to counties, and they listened to people. So the report, once it is out, is not a report of the 10 people. It's a report of Kenyans that gave submissions. The young people gave submissions as well.
Sorry. It would appear that the conversation that this gentleman are having and the conversation out there,
it's a different
totally mismatched. And that these people are having a totally different kind of conversation that the Gen Zs feel, no, that's not what you're talking about.
I do not have a problem with that. But the fact that, do we first of all agree that in 2023 we had a NADCO committee that sat down as a national dialogue committee? They sat down and there were things that they thrashed. And I think last year, if this discussion was there last year in December or January or February this year, everybody will say that's the discussion that is required because the NADCO report is supposed to come out. But now because the Gen Z's issues have come up, we are trying to imagine that the NADCO thing has disappeared. And yet at that time, it was the hot potato, just like this one of Gen Z's. Probably next year, we will have something that is beyond the Gen Z's. So I think for me, let us first of all stick to what we started. If Gen Z's have started something, we will also need to start to stick on what Gen Z's have started before we go to something else.
Hence my question, Banalote, do you think this announcement about a possible dialogue next week was probably misplaced at yesterday's event, that probably they should have announced this at a different forum, not while signing the IBC bill?
For me, I will not say it is misplaced. Because let us also live at the present moment. Let us live at the facts at the present moment. At the present moment, this country is at the brink of collapse because of what is happening. And I think everybody needs to rescue this country from collapse by any means. If we have actually rescued this country before through dialogue, why not have a dialogue now? And so signing into law this IBC selection panel basically means it was an opportunity of moving this country forward.
What about the suggestion?
Then, because the living conditions now dictates that people need to discuss, people need to talk.
You agree with that suggestion for dialogue through that multi-sectoral forum?
Of course, people need to, and the reason why this country has survived. If you look at the Bible, there's a point where the Bible says, one I think Isaiah, they say, come, let us dialogue. And I think globally, everything that we see has actually been born out of dialogue.
But there's a resounding no.
That's what I'm saying. But it seems the most political blunders any politician would do is to misread the mood of the public. And Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, even as he stood there, you could see he was very jittery. You know, he may be coerced to come to that platform, and he understood what was happening around and asked the president that even as you do this, please understand that what Gen Z is asking. You know, he was telling the political class that was standing yesterday. Now you see, one of the things I say that sometimes I don't know whether we learn or we don't, or we unlearn but still relearn, you know, the bad practices that we onboard. We have suffered a defeat of Building Bridges initiative before. And there was a conversation about an all-inclusive government in the name of the handshake that came in. What happened then was that Baba went and rescued Uhuru's boat that was sinking post election. So what was the aftermath of that particular conversation was that there's a government where there's a handshake government, the incorporation of members of the opposition in the government. And that it went through for a conversation until Honorable Raila Odinga became the candidate. All right? Kenyans learn from that particular event. And you saw the frustration that was coming in a sense that the innocent Raila was then associated with the failure of President Uhuru Kenyatta's regime. And you saw where the vote went through. That was used against Raila, even if it was clear that he was not particular part of the baggage Uhuru was. But the narrative was created to make sure that is part of the problem that Kenyans were facing by that time. The results were there in 2022. It seems again that we've begun a conversation towards that direction of, can we have a government of national unity? Oh, we are not discussing about...
You see a possibility of Raila again carrying the burden of the administration.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It seems that we are not learning, and I don't know the handlers of the former Prime Minister. This, and I'm saying, and is quoted, I'm even providing a reference. Citizens are telling Raila, please, we have a problem with this government that you are not part of. Keep off. Let us deal with it. Let us clean this particular political system. But the next moment he's seen endorsing a conversation. I'm not saying that he's not a person who would require dialogue. But the provisions of the dialogue is very clear. That Mheshimiwa and the President of the Republic of Kenya had actually yielded that we are going to have a dialogue with this generation, an inclusive dialogue, right? And that we are asking you to front a leader. And that when he attended the space, he yielded some of the political mistakes that his regime has been doing. Admission that some of the cabinet secretaries might have done better. I think that was to thaw down. I think that was to try to make...
Just to pacify.
Just to pacify and understand that I'm listening to you. In fact, when you attended that Twitter space, he said that I, the president, have been accused for not listening. I am here to listen. And the public poured out their outrage. And the president said, we are listening. This kind of blunders where then the next day you appear in the public and signing IBC, this kind of amendment. And this is what I'm saying, you don't just get it. Okay. Kenyans have asked you that we need a reform in some of these institutions. What kind of reform? Yes, I think the better thing would have been that he acknowledges that we have a problem in the constitution of IBC. And as a president, I acknowledge. But then what is the advice of you so that we reconstitute IBC in a better way that is legally, but is all inclusive? Okay. Look at what he has done. He has gone ahead to withdraw from a design of a conversation that was exclusive. NADCO report cannot be used right now to constitute IBC when the mood of the public right now is against any political conversation report. Okay,
and the president appears to have missed the point in as far as communicating. Many people criticized his methods, even in hosting that space on X. He's been out there and appears, and I mentioned this earlier, that it would appear the president is a solitary figure, that he's been pushed into a corner by the prevailing situation, so much so that he finds himself alone and now in need of friends. And that is what we saw yesterday. Do you think that that is a situation?
First of all, Fred, let me just, first of all, just come back a little bit to what we said about the NADCO report. Because basically what I'm hearing is NADCO report is not important. What this country started in 2022 is not important. The discussions of 2022 is not important. For me, I think that is a wrong perception of everything in this country. Because now that is emotionalizing everything and like there is no reason on anything that we started. That is one. Two, there is not anything in this world that has ever happened without a discussion. That is one thing I would really want us to say. That it was exigent that this NADCO findings, this report that was submitted way back in February, now needs to be made into law because it was a discussion of Kenyans. It is not an exclusive, like I'm hearing, kind of discussion. It was an open discussion to every Kenyan, and every Kenyan was given a chance. And it was signed by Kalonzo Musyoka. Listen, it was signed by Kalonzo Musyoka, who was the co-chair with Kimani Ichung'wah. This thing was done openly. I didn't hear at that point people saying it is an exclusive report that was done by 10 people. It was actually done by all Kenyans through a committee. Now, to come to what you said, you are actually saying that the president looks to be solitary. I think the president is listening. He's listening, and when the youth say, we want you to talk to us, we do not have a representation. There's a time the president say, I want you, some of you to come to State House, then we can have a discussion. And the youth say, no, we do not have a representation. We want you to discuss to all of us. And he said, what is the space? And they said, there's an X space. So I don't think the president, if the president sent probably a cabinet secretary or anybody else, the youth will say, no, we are not discussing with the president, we're discussing with somebody else. And so the president is not solitary. The president actually responded to the needs of the youth. And he went to the next space. I do not think anywhere in the world there's a president that will take him. But did it work? Because now he's looking for all the methods. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. When he went to the X space, of course, when you're having a discussion, you actually saw this thing when Kofi Annan came here. Before Kofi Annan, there was somebody from Tanzania. And there was Thabo Mbeki, and then finally Kofi Annan. So it doesn't mean that when you start a process, it ends the same day. It's a process. It starts from an X space, and then there were people who poured out their hearts to the president.
Just give me the kept on insisting that we are leaderless, and therefore we cannot have any of our representatives come to your table.
And true. The reason why one, he said, okay, what is your space? And they say X space. And the president came. So the president expressed himself in an X space where there were 100,000 youths. But unfortunately, let me tell you, that is the reason why we say the youth probably could also be reading the signs differently. There are those who say we are not going to go to that space. And yet they are the very same ones who said we want the president to discuss with us in a space that we have made a choice. So the same day the president was in an X space, there was another space that was created, which was already starting to pour water into the discussions that was going to take place. So basically telling you there was no reasoning here. There was already an emotional bit of everything here. Now, we've gone through the X space. The president was able to concede, like he has said, some of the aspects. And I think the youths were, okay, he's listened to us. The youths were actually acknowledged that he's listened to us to some bit. Now we need to go from there It is not now about the president. It's about this country called Kenya. This country called Kenya is a country of all stakeholders, including the members of the opposition.
That was the initial proposal by the president, the multi-sectoral forum, even before he hosted the...
Exactly.
It was initial. Yes. It was his initial proposal.
Yes.
But the youth said, okay, fine, we are not coming.
They've already said no.
Let us come for...
Why go back to that same proposal where people have already said no?
I have said, and I've given you an example, and I think it's important that we also listen from history. I've given you, when this country was collapsing in 2007, Mkapa came here first. They were rejected. People said, no, we are not listening to anybody. We are not even dialoguing. And then they came Becky, I think it was Becky from South Africa. People rejected that as well. In fact, it was made in a way that we are not dialoguing. We want this country to collapse. We want Kibaki out. That is our bare minimum. That was what was happening. But I think with time, people started getting sense and knew that if we go this direction, we are going to go Somalia way. Probably we're going to go. People started getting senses. By the time Kofi Annan came, people were now ready. They were mature for our discussion. And that is what saved Kenya from the blink of collapse in 2007. So I will tell you that even when we go to the X space, it doesn't mean that everything ends there. We might reject at first, we might reject at the second point, but at the end of it all, I have actually done conflict resolution. There are several processes. And one of the first process, which I agree is actually going on, is that first, people do not even want to talk to each other.
Yes.
But at the end of it all, people will discuss and talk to each other.
Next week,
I'll tell you,
from Monday, do you think it's possible to have this dialogue next week?
It might not work. It might not work because the youth have said, no, we are not coming for it. But there is a process. It might not work, just like we rejected Thabo Mbeki, we rejected Mkapa. Finally, if we are true to this country, if we believe that this country needs to continue, finally, there is going to be a point where people are going to sit down, people are going to discuss. So I will not be a prophet to say it works or it doesn't work. But I think there is an olive branch that has been extended to Kenyans and say, okay, listen, youth, we cannot solve our national issues on airspace. Can you now have leaders who can come and have a discussion and give us your proposal in a structured manner? Because an X space, somebody will definitely finally go and contest and say everything that was done in X space was not according to the law, because the law does not provide any solution in X space.
Okay.
So I think
going back to analog,
that's what I'm saying.
If we can go back to the analog, if an analog situation has ever solved a matter in this country, probably this is the exigent time for us to be able to go back to the analog.
Has it ever worked?
We cannot. We cannot. If you see this particular political establishment that you're portraying on this screen, and as Honorable Lotte has been saying, that learning from the history, some of these particular faces, you can trace that they were at the center of these post-electoral issues we were trying to deal with. In other terms, what the generation is saying, that this political establishment you're seeing here today on the papers, these are the same people who have messed up this country. And that they cannot propose any other solution that works, because what they are saying is that no analog solution that has not found any solution for Kenyans can be employed now. A challenge that Kenyans have gone through have been attributed to some of these guys that you're seeing on the screen. I am quoting what they are saying. Number two, I agree that even in a process of conversation on a dialogue, Fred, you cannot invite me to a dialogue with your own terms. It is impossible.
Okay.
All right? The terms that you're inviting me is the terms that you've even created how that dialogue should be done.
The dates.
Even the dates, or even the format, or even the document we should refer to. I cannot come to that dialogue. It is impossible, because the end result of that dialogue will be what you want. You understand? So while we agree that sometimes it is important, and we generally agree as a country, that conflict is not leading us anywhere. That when we are touching down our institution, it's not good for the progress of this country. That we agree. And in the process of concessions, in the process of coming back for a dialogue in the table, it cannot be that one person is suggesting the modalities of that dialogue. Okay. What we are saying is that we all need an inclusive dialogue. You cannot refer to a document that was canvassed by two political parties. By the way, if you look keenly, NADCO report was the second conversation committee after the bipartisan talk failed. The politicians and the two political agreements disagreed on so many issues that were in that composition. There was no one Look at the composition. Tell me in that composition who represent any other factor apart from the politicians.
Let's take a breather now. Let's watch at least one of the stories that our reporters prepared yesterday with regard to what we're discussing on the multi-sectoral forum, GTAS. Let's watch that story now.
In what appears to be a new turn of events, the country is setting a new trajectory. Next week, a multi-sectoral forum is expected to bring together 150 delegates, set to outline the way forward for the nation.
It will be a 6-day forum and will propose the way forward for the country.
These 150 delegates, 50 slots have been reserved for the youth who have led a month-long protest pushing for reforms within the Kenya Kwanza government.
A dialogue is the way forward out of the crisis that we're having today in our country. We've agreed that we give people an opportunity to be heard.
However, some Azimio principals, including Raila's 2022 presidential running mate Martha Karua, have criticized the Ruto-Raila camaraderie, insisting that dialogue must be guided by transparency and the people's best interest. Raila's close associate during the NADCO talks, Kalonzo Musyoka, was absent from the president and Azimio leaders' briefing, raising questions about his stance.
Be honest with ourselves. Perhaps we need now to go back to Bomas, because during the presentations, Kimani and Cheruiyot may remember, and Wandai was deputizing me, that a lot of Kenyans wanted us to open this space. The space has been opened by Gen Z. I wish we had moved with speed. It has taken inordinate delay to get to where we are today, to get the
Hours after the KICC meeting, Kalonzo took to X to urge the government to read the public mood, emphasizing the Gen Z's demands for action and cost of living must be addressed to avert further crisis.
You, Mr. President, order the Inspector General of Police. If he doesn't resign, can he remove the police from the streets? Can the army get out of our streets and back to the barracks?
All eyes are now on next week's forum, with a deadline for delegate selection set for Friday. Sheila Chelangat for TV 47.
It's clear that quite a number of politicians are not even comfortable with this discussion that is even being proposed. Could it be, as Bwana Kalonzo Musyoka suggested, a little bit too late? Bwana Lote.
Well, in a time like this, you do not expect agreements to be there from the onset. There definitely be a disagreement, definitely, in every conflict. At the onset of the solution to that conflict, there is definitely going to be a disagreement, and I don't think this is a different one. This is the same. And so we expect those kind of discussions to take place, and I'll tell you it will take place. Probably we're going to have a lot more of a contrary opinion to what the president suggested. But I think for everything that happens, there should be a head. There should be a point where it starts. There should be a voice that starts the whole thing. And I think when the president started, probably if a Gen Z will have stood and say, now we want a national dialogue, probably it will be very different. Just the person that make the pronouncement. But on the basis that the president and the government has been rejected by Gen Z, anything that the president, anything that the government say is going to be negative. So probably the strategy was what was not agreeable. But I'll tell you, with time, because we've seen many leaders saying no, and I actually want to take a very critical examination of what happened in 2007. We actually had this. We were part of the whole thing. We saw it. There was a lot of disagreement, including the venue, including the moderators. Everything was a disagreement until the levels where everybody agreed. And this country was saved from the brink of collapse. And this country, the difference
probably was that at that time, it was, you could identify who could speak on either side of this dialogue. This time around, the challenge we're facing is that the insistence by the Gen Zs that they are leaderless. they are the other side, how do you dialogue with people who are saying we are leaderless? You include all of them.
And that is the danger. And that is the very extreme danger, because there is nowhere in any organization, including your house, that we have leaderless institutions. An institution should have leaders. And I think it is an exigent, it's the right time for the Gen Zs. And I agree, what their grievances is correct. And I think the Gen Zs have been able to turn the history of this country. They have been able to take us to levels where we might not have actually reached. The Gen Zs have actually had the president and the government tone down some of the things that the government were doing. And I agree totally with the Gen Zs. But I think now the Gen Zs need to be organized. Because when we say we cannot dialogue, for example, what other mechanisms do we have to have this country run forward? What are the mechanisms? Nobody's proposing anything. We just say we don't want this government. We should have a mechanism, a way out. It's not just about saying no.
In those old ways.
The reason why I'm saying, let the Gen Zs organize themselves, even at this particular point, so that we cannot have a leaderless institution anywhere in the world.
They may be leaderless, but some of the things they're suggesting that they need to do, and they're going forward to doing them, they are waiting for the formation of the IEBC so that they can begin recalling the members of parliament. They already have an agenda.
And exactly that is what was done, because how do you form IEBC until you sign up the NADCO report? So I think then they should be actually saying, well, I think the president and the government is doing something for our agenda. So they should just say, thank you, President, because now we are opening up the reconstitution of the IBC, then after which we can now be able to do other things. So I think the Gen Zs also need to appreciate the fact that even the government, the very same government that they don't want, is doing something that is going to help them in their agenda. Otherwise, it becomes thoughtless for us to say that we have an institution that is leaderless, headless, and that is going to go anywhere. It cannot.
Bwana Rogo, do you think that President William Ruto has been pushed to a corner? That now he has no choice. He has no friends. Members of the National Assembly wako mafichoni, according to the headlines.
Yes.
His deputy.
That is according to the headlines.
Yes.
But even some of them, have printed T-shirt and say we are sorry.
Yes. And we're just looking at the headlines.
Yes.
His deputy president is busy doing something else elsewhere. The president has been left alone. And now he is in need of friends.
Yes.
That's what we're seeing now.
And not only in need of friends, he needs a very, very, very correct and truthful advice. As to whether he's listening to that advice or not is something else. But he needs to be told. He needs friends like Kalonzo Musyoka who looks into the face and tell him exactly what the public mood is. He needs such friends right now. Because there's a lot of, even in the process of solving this solution, he's making a lot of blunders, like we are looking at this particular situation here. Fred, I disagree a number of sentiments today with my friend, good friend and colleague, Mheshimiwa Lote, very articulate about issues, but I think he's getting it wrong today. Absolutely wrong. One, can you look, if you want, we are not just criticizing the NADCO report for just a matter of criticizing. We are criticizing that report based on so many aspects. How did they arrive at a report? The process in itself was a process of two bipartisan conversation. That is what we are trying to tell the political class. That by the moment that NADCO report, well, because of the prevailing circumstances by that time, there was a need for truce. There was a need to pacify the mandamanos that were happening each and every time until that conversation was actually reached. But what we are realizing and what Mheshimiwa Kalonzo is saying is that indeed he chaired the NADCO meeting, right? He chaired the committee. And he's the one saying that I think we need to go back to that particular committee. It is not my words, he's saying. For that committee to open up and become inclusive. In other terms, he is admitting that some of these recommendations that were done by NADCO report might be relevant in the backdrop of the new prevailing circumstances. That is what we are telling.
Including even on the IEBC.
Yes.
Centered to the fact that it is political parties that were fighting to get to choose.
Exactly. Who is sitting on the panel, and that will have a ripple effect on who are the commissioners.
The Generation Z and other Kenyans do not necessarily agree with the
That's what I'm saying. That is what I'm saying. It is as simple as that. And it is not something that required a rocket science for you to understand. What the generation is saying is that we understand that was that time. The prevailing circumstances now requires you to go back and become an inclusive, make that process as inclusive as possible. So the thing is not to, you know, pour water on the reports that was there. The generation is saying that right now, you cannot bring that report as a process of that conversation.
We have fresh demands.
Because we have fresh demands is overtaken by time. That is what they are saying. And secondly, is on the, because we are talking about this particular, you know, IBC. I am made, and we understand, that's what I'm saying, that if a conversation to, you know, to fill up the gaps that is there in IBC, the generation has requested for an inclusion. It means that if you go back to that committee that you are proposing, how did you arrive at proposing at 100 members? Simple. Who is the mediator of that committee? Simple. There are questions that you are not answering until now. Because what you are standing up on the stairs to say is that we are going to have 6 days. Who decided on the days? That's a question you are not answering. Who is going to mediate that process? And who has a voice? Very important, because you are asking about 50. You know, representative of the youth, then what is that particular accountability to that particular process? We've had people submitting their views, including the finance bill that has become contested, including the NADCO report. Where is my view? Where is my perspective?
There's an entire generation that needs to be in this conversation, Bwana Lote. And if we could just for a moment focus on the IEBC issue, which was the main issue yesterday. This issue of the multi-sectoral forum was secondary. There are new laws proposed in this IBC. Now, not really proposed, now it's law. That one, the vice chairperson of the commission will not automatically become the chairperson whenever a vacancy occurs. Secondly, IBC commissioner must have 10 years experience in their areas of study with IT as one of the key fields, which basically locks out enough people from that position. And the chairperson of the commission shall be a person who's qualified to hold the office of judge of the Supreme Court. Now, there's also the amount of influence that political parties will have in selecting this new commissioners. That is one of the things that this young generation is disagreeing with. The issue that this political class is at loggerheads with an entire generation. It means that even the document that was signed into law yesterday, they're not in agreement with.
Well, first of all, let me disagree a little bit with my friend here when he said that the process of NADCO was a process of two political parties. I think that was rejected when we had the bipartisan talk. We had a bipartisan talk, which was rejected. It was rejected because it was a bipartisan between the ruling coalition and the opposition. And then what then formed was the national dialogue. NADCO then brought everybody else on board. And the reason why now people say, now this one we are comfortable with. So first of all, let us appreciate the fact that despite the fact that we might not agree with the report, let us agree with the process. The process was okay, and the reason why it was even signed by Kalonzo Musyoka. And I think I would have actually, I would not want to fault Kalonzo Musyoka based on his political history and his age in politics. He would not have signed that report if he was sincere to himself. He signed it, and now he's trying to fault it. It is wrong.
Probably it was right for him to sign back then.
It was wrong.
But things have changed.
It is wrong. He said something that he will have said then. He said, I wish everybody, it was open to people. He should have said, I'm not signing this report because it was not open. He sat there, he earned allowance, he went to the people, he listened. He did not discourage them from coming. People wrote submissions, other burned their midnight oil to ensure that there's submission. And then he's saying it is not a process. For me, I would not want to fault him, but I think he needed to have reconsidered his saying here. The other thing is, if the Gen Zs who I appreciate, and this is actually, if you look at the demographics in this country, the Gen Zs are actually taking charge in terms of their numbers, and they can actually dictate the political landscape of this country. What I will say is, at what level then, because you're saying the Gen Zs are saying the Gen Zs, at what platform is that? So I think, and that's one thing I will continue saying, there should be a leadership that speak on behalf of them, because we all do not go to parliament. We send representatives globally. Initially in Greece, before population was increased, every male adult was 18 years, will go to that tree and they will discuss issues. But when they realized that the man numbers were big, they say, let us send our representatives. And
that's why we started this conversation.
On this level, we now need
very little public confidence in the National Assembly.
I know, there is no, I'm actually trying to say how the National Assemblies globally came into being. It is because we will not all go sit in this house. And so we'll send our representatives. the youths in this country, the majority, they are actually large in numbers. They can all not come and sit in a place to discuss. They should be having a representatives. And the reason why I'm saying, even when the youths are speaking, there should be a structured way of us having a discussion with the youth. And I think the president was giving a suggestion. Even me, I will say, even when the youths are saying they are leaderless, they are headless, they should have a representation so that should they reach a point where we need to make a decision, that decision
don't they already have leaders?
Representatives. They have said
persons like Titus Lote, who
that's what exactly.
As a member of the National Assembly.
I'm a member of the National. I'm talking about Gen Zs. They have said
they also.
But you represent.
I represent them. But at this point, you're saying that let's leave the mood. The mood of the Gen Zs is that we do not have trust even on the people that we have sent to represent us, and so we also need to listen to them. And I want us to be genuine to these young people. Let them then come up with a representation that will then sit and discuss with anybody else on behalf of...
It's the same problem, Lote, and I know it looks like we're going back and forth here. It's the fact that the members of the National Assembly who have been elected by the general population to go and represent them have failed them. And their concerns and reluctance to elect another group of leaders who are still going to fail them. Hence the reluctance by this generation to have 2-3 people who are known as their leaders.
So basically what you're telling me is that it is only chaos that is being looked for, because if they cannot accept the members of parliament, which represent them, and they cannot even trust the few of them to go and represent them, then at what level do we say that they're going to be an organization where a conversation is going to take place with the agencies? Because definitely, let me tell you, there is nowhere where 50 million people or 20 million people, for that case, let's say 2 million agencies will just have to come and sit in a hall and discuss. There is no provision for that. They must have faith. Or if they cannot have faith in the members of parliament, they cannot have faith in government, they cannot have faith in the members of the opposition, including Raila Odinga that has fought for this country beyond everybody else, they should then have faith even within themselves. If they cannot, then we are actually creating recipe for disaster. Because if we cannot have a discussion, if we cannot have faith on the few that is going to represent us, then we will always mistrust each other. So that if it is Ndimuli today going to represent me, I'll mistrust you. If it is Lote today going to represent Ndimuli, you will mistrust me. Yes. And if we are in that level, let me tell you, we are only waiting for disaster in this country. And I do not think anybody wants a disaster in this country. People want solutions. Solutions that is going to make us move forward as a country. And that solution, one of those solutions that I'll say, is that the Gen Zs, with all due respect, need to create a leadership that will now need to push the agenda in a structured way.
Okay.
Let me say that I have been very in my fair assessment, and I've said this, talked to colleagues, I've talked to these platforms that the guy is organizing, and one of the things I tell is we need to be logical, even on our approach to issues. Even as much as we engage in our political processes, we also need to look at ourselves and be logical. One is by the fact that there needs to be a recognition that someone has to speak. Someone has to speak in one of the ways. Correct. That's what I'm saying. It's relevant for a political process because, there's a vacuum that will be created. And anyone can arise and say, I'm representing. And you've seen that kind of conversation online. When people are rising and saying, I am speaking or being seen on certain platforms, you have seen that. People are taking advantage of that particular vacuum. So one of the things that a conversation we've had within is just saying, okay, fine. There are people who could be fronting a conversation who necessarily not leader, but they could be, a structured way of speaking to the needs. The danger with that then has been that the entire political process could be corrupting, and how corrupt it is, these particular leaders could as well be co-opted in this kind of conversation and lose direction. It has been happening. If it's happening to our members of parliament who are elected by different ticket and have crossed over, to now speak for another political parties, then it could happen to these particular leaders. And in the danger of that is why the generation has decided to say that, of course, we can stick to these comfortable spaces where we could still hold ourselves to account, but still invite the leaders for a dialogue. I mean, you've just made a reference to X-Space. however much it was, however much people did not agree. But one of the things I said, it was a logical conversation. The president was on the space. We talked on the space. We fronted our views on the space. And that's what I've said. You have realized that after that space, the conversation, the tension a little bit went down. Because whether you like it or not, that was a comfortable space for Gen Zs, and it was as much as it could have not been a comfortable space for the executive, but it provided a platform where there was beginning of a conversation, of a dialogue. So one of the dangers we must also point at is that the current political system that we are trying to dismantle might push or might have a narrative that you people elect your leaders so that they will pacify the leaders. That is one thing on the fear. And I agree with you when you're saying, if the system corrupts those who are elected, then how much can it corrupt these young guys who can be sent to front a conversation to the leaders? So we are at a point where we are saying, and I agree that it can't be leaderless, it can't be, because then sometimes it will be logical. But at least we cannot allow the political class to push people to a comfortable space that they would want to dictate. And how that happens,
you know. Both agree that at some point there could be people identified to sit around a table and dialogue. But probably this generation is saying we are not there yet. That probably the agitation we have right now is to change. And we want to see that change before we even come to the table. They've done that with the Reject Finance Bill. They were successful. They're saying that probably we need to recall some members of Parliament who have failed us, and they could be successful even without a leader. They are insisting now that members of the President's cabinet, in fact, they're demanding that the entire cabinet be dissolved. They could be successful. Those are some of the demands that do not require any leadership. It is a general acclamation and agitation, and their demands are clear. Don't you think that probably ignoring this kind of sentiment is wrong from the government side?
Well, I do not really think the government is ignoring. And the reason why I've said, humbly, the president was able to join into an X space where you are dealing with people that can abuse.
He has promised severally to reconstitute his cabinet. He hasn't.
Well, I have said that was the X space was done last week. The Express was done last week, and if you listen to the mood of the talks yesterday, when even the headlines are saying that they could be a government of the term that was used is national unity. You know, when a government of national unity comes, it basically means that members are going to be drawn. There is going to be a reshuffle in all spaces of government, and that basically means that was listened to, but it's not a process that starts today and ends today. It's a process that takes time. So that if he had reconstituted his cabinet, for example, and then there is going to be national unity, there's going to be another reconstitution. So I think the waiting probably was so that we can be able to have everybody on board, including the youth, the Gen Zs, the opposition, the ruling government. Then we can sit down and say, okay, and then how do we reconstitute? So I think sometimes when we want to fault, we can fault anything, anywhere. If he had done that, we will say he has rushed because he didn't listen to us. Now that he's waited, we say, no, he has waited, it's beyond time. So I think it's important that we become logical. Sometimes we become a little bit reasonable, because I always know when emotions overtake reasons, it doesn't matter. That's the reason why people kill themselves. They're emotionally tied to an issue, and they fail to understand that if I kill myself, this and this and this is going to happen. So reason is always put under the table. And I want to say, I do not want to say that the youth, the Gen Zs have been emotional to the levels where they cannot reason. I think they do reason, and the reason why we've seen them giving proposals. But I think it's also important that we balance between emotions and reason, so that once we strike a clear balance, we can be able to push our agenda, but at the same time reason as to whether we are pushing our agenda in the right direction.
Do you think, for example, the plan to recall members of the National Assembly as soon as IEBC is reconstituted is an emotional approach?
It is not an emotional, because it is actually a provision in our constitution. The reason why people wrote this constitution 10 years or 20 years ago is because they knew there could be members of parliament that are not performing, or they're not representing their people as it should be. And so that provision is there, and probably it has not been used, and so Gen Zs are pushing for it to be used, which is important, that some parts of our constitution which has not been enacted should now be enacted. So it is not an emotional thing. It is probably something that is provided for in the constitution. We cannot say it is wrong. It is right because it is provided.
Otherwise, you do agree with that?
I do agree with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think they'll be successful in this without a leader, ensuring at least that push, because they've already started the process in some areas, to recall members of the National Assembly, something that has yet to be done since the promulgation of the Constitution?
I think everything goes with the mood of the public. And this is why I am insisting that some of these particular observation or the things that we are saying right now might be illogical, to certain extent to some people. But actually when you see how things are escalating, it seems that is headed towards that direction. And I told you, Fred, that people faulted this particular protest when it began. There was a lot of doubts whether it will yield to anything. We kept saying... We were very doubtful whether the pain was... Yes. You remember that conversation? Yes. And I told people, watch the space, it will come, and it came so soon. And right now, I foresee a situation where one success builds to the other of a movement. The realization that you can peacefully protest and you can organize on those particular spaces where you are safe, and change is effected. If you can manage to mobilize for a finance bill without a leader to be pulled, then it means you can pile pressure on the political establishment to agree to reconstitute the IBC in a manner that is consistent with the law, in a manner that is inclusive, in a manner that is well canvassed. It is possible. So that is why we are here, and we've been telling the political class that even as much as you think that we should draw from a certain bipartisan or bi-politically canvassed conversation, it might meet a hurdle ahead, because majority of the public in every quarters, their voices that are being raised is not only Gen Zs. The church has reached out to the political class to hear, to the voices of... the church is a whole other discussion. I don't know if... I'm saying in the platforms recently, in the pulpit, the generation decided there is no politics in pulpit. The generation has decided that even within, a few minutes to the mass, we must be given time to talk about matters of this country. So with that consistent push, then it means that the political class will listen. And it's just a matter of time. Let me tell you that this particular dialogue committee, or whatever is being proposed, the 6 days or with the 50 members, it will be, and if the executive decides not to listen to the demands of generation movement, then it means that that particular process will proceed by itself, when they'll be having their own conversation and other people will be having their own conversation in another space. And then that it will not be an inclusive agenda. Okay. Let me also point out that I feel, this is my opinion, I feel the jitters right now with the reconstitution of IBC, it is purely a political meddling. While it is envisioned in the law, as Honorable Lotte has said, but the process in itself will yield to an outcome that will be interfered with. And you've well pointed out that this particular report or this particular initiative proposal, the generation is clear that reconstitute IBC so that we recall our members of parliament. Must be making very many people uncomfortable right now. Silently. So that's what I'm saying, that it will not be an easy task on their end. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll finalize this conversation by talking about friends of the president. There's one particular friend who is not very close to the president, that's a deputy president, and he's going through some challenges. We'll be looking at that after the break. You're watching Morning Cafe.
Kila kiongozi ana hadithi yake ya kipekee.
Wazazi wangu walikuwa bit strict kwa sababu mamangu mwenyewe, mimi kutoka kuzaliwa sijailala nje.
The white small one, huyo ana sniff gunpowder na risasi na bomb. Alafu huyo mwingine ni ridgeback ana sniff simba.
Even the employees knows that. So when in the boardroom is the chairman, the CEO, and the rest of...
At what point are you a wife?
The minute you get to that inside that door, you become now the wife.
Na kila maamuzi wanayoyafanya hufichua mengi kuhusu utu wao na uongozi wao.
We see God blessing us, and we now realize the power of giving also has to be rewarded back.
Kupitia kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, tunakuletea mahojiano ya kusisimua na uchambuzi wa kina kuhusu viongozi wetu.
Pick your core business as the bigger stones. Put them in your diary first. Give priority the bigger things.
Usikose kila Alhamis saa 1:30 jioni.
In a world where challenges are as common as opportunities, there are those who dare to defy the odds. They are the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship isn't just about starting a business. It's about embracing uncertainty, pushing boundaries, and turning dreams into reality.
Hata ambao ni pesa ya kusave. Wallahi. Ambao mwaka ni pesa nyingi sana.
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
The way we run the business is in a very unforgiving way, where every team member has to bring out their best.
So, to all the dreamers, innovators, and risk takers out there, remember, being an entrepreneur isn't just a job, it's a way of life. Join the journey, become an entrepreneur.
There was confusion as Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua found himself in a dilemma after what observers point out to be an outright breach of protocol. National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah ushering Opposition Chief Raila Odinga to speak and asking him to later welcome President William Ruto during the ceremony to sign in the 2024 IEBC bill into law.
I now have the honor to invite the former Prime Minister, Your Excellency Honorable Raila Odinga, to give his remarks, and thereafter invite His Excellency the President.
However, the President, in a move to save the situation, seemingly shielded his deputy by inviting him to speak.
My brother, President William Ruto, to address you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think before I make, just hold on, before I make some remarks, I have listened very carefully to the leaders who spoke as it should be. But let me ask my deputy to make a few remarks so that I can conclude.
According to established traditions, it is the Deputy President's responsibility to introduce the President before he delivers his speech.
Dr. William Ruto.
This is not the first time such an incident has occurred. Last year, during the launch of the Universal Health Coverage Program at Uhuru Gardens in Nairobi, a similar scenario unfolded where the Deputy President ended up defending the head of state.
Generate all those who have spoken there because it is the President himself who invited them to speak from there and breached protocol.
Wow. This kind of drama. When a country is in crisis, and you can see the president looks like he's carrying a heavy burden on his shoulders. He does not need this kind of drama that we are seeing, breaches in protocol that appear so obvious. We are used to the fact that it is the deputy president who invites the president to speak. When other leaders around the president do this kind of things, it's the same thing we're talking about. The president appears to be isolated even more by the kind of actions that he's or people close to him are undertaking, Bwana Lote.
Well, first of all, let us look at the silver lining in this cloud. Because one, appreciate the fact that the president recognized that the deputy president was there and that he was supposed to be given a chance. So I want to say the president was very tactful and also very purposeful to ensure that the protocols are followed. Mm-hmm. So with that, blame will not go to the president. But I also think based on the situation at hand, based on the kind of screaming headlines that we are seeing today and the public mood of yesterday, such kind of protocol breaches will be excused because the tensions were very high, and because of the tensions that were very high, sometimes when you are going through a lot of stress, because this is a very stressful situation in this country.
The biggest burden here is the president, and he appears the only one respecting protocol.
And I've said he is the one who was actually noted that the deputy president needed to speak. And so I've said, let's look at the silver lining in this cloud. And so this is a cloud. I've not said it's not a cloud, but I've said sometimes when you go through this kind of tension that we've gone through as a country now, you probably expect some bit of glitches here and there. It's not the first time. We've actually seen it in all governments. I remember there was one that was very bad during Kibak's time that also cost probably the cabinet secretary. Then they were called ministers. So sometimes it happens, but I think it's very unfortunate. For me, I'll say it is not supposed to be happening, and especially now, despite the pressures that we're going through as a country. It is important that we respect protocols, it's important we respect positions. That way we can also tell Gen Zs that it's important that even them start respecting some of the institutions. If we do not respect institutions and protocols, probably we are also sending very wrong signals to agencies.
True. When the younger generation look at the kind of chaos around the presidency, given the strained relations with his deputy, the breach of protocol, basically a show of disrespect to the deputy president, they learn something, and as far as politics is concerned, that you can actually mistreat some people as long as you have power.
I mean, well, I think I do not see it that way. I think some of these particular happenings, there's nothing that is so coincident in politics. I think you know that, Fred, every time. This was an event that was properly arranged. This was an event that the whole presidency and, the top-notch guys in government, including the Prime Cabinet Secretary, everyone was there. The leaders on the National Assembly, except maybe the judiciary was absent. But the two tiers of government was having a session. So it could be very inexcusable to say that there was a breach of protocol by the fact that people were stressed, maybe. I don't know. Being human, as Honorable is saying, could be. The president might have forgotten in the thick of things. But I think, to put it plainly, we have seen a lot of jittery. One, it started as a lot of tension within the UDA party, where certain political affiliations, whether you are affiliated to the deputy president side or the president side, on the remember there are a lot of issues with the UDA primaries. It just started. And then it went to now the president, people who are closer to the president, mishandling the deputy president. He's been on public record saying that. It generated to the deputy president arriving late in meetings and citing, not able to access chopper and weather conditions, while in effect the likes of Sudi were accessing these particular choppers and going to these particular places. Now it's reached a level where there's a breach in protocol. Now, in the last reigns of President Uhuru Kenyatta, there was a lot of breach in protocols, you remember. When, conversation, people never noticed that the current president was in attendance. The conversation in Bomas around BBI, you remember what happened. The conversation about parliamentary PG when Uhuru convened to...
It's happening again, and it would appear the common figure there is always Raila Odinga.
Yes,
a lot of
he's incoming to disrupt the political space, and wherever he stepped in, I think there's all these protocol, and probably that is why Rick just said is seal all the loopholes so that this guy do not come in, and do his thing. So anyway, I think learning from this, and this is what the generation is talking about, that we are seeing a political system that agrees. That forms coalesce around interest. And when that interest is threatened, then even the executive themselves do not sit eye to eye, because people are pulling towards different directions, different interests. And it is not why there needs to be a conversation. One of the things that Gen Zs are talking about is a generational conversation, whether the political system we have is working that assures that there is democratic space, that assures that even you can disagree or to agree sometimes without, disrespecting protocol like that, or without acknowledging, that you have political leaders within your midst. So I agree with you. The precedents that is set here, probably the lessons that are being learned, but also, like I said, we need to be fairly on our assessment. We have seen a direction where the deputy president is pulling a different direction from the president. These are times when I think he should stick to the president. These are times when he could be the one offering solidarity.
Crisis, yes.
In times of crisis, and offering solidarity and solutions that work best. I think this is not the time that he could be pulling towards a different direction. You've seen one member of parliament, threatening to spill beans of what is going on in the mountain. You've seen the MP for Mathira, I think, the one that is touted as his son, his political son that he mentored, is now pulling towards a different direction. So I think this is a time when the deputy president should be equally looking at inwardly. What is going on that is, for him himself, is finding himself in a very uncomfortable situation like this.
Okay. Finally, as you make your final remarks, the president looks more and more isolated. I've said this and again, given the people or the kind of actions by the people around him. Bwana Lote, what do you think should change around the president as he continues to handle this crisis, as you make your final remarks?
Well, as I make my final remark, I want to say that it could be a wrong perception that the president is isolated. He is not. The president has got everybody. You also saw yesterday. Now we can see, instead of being isolated, we can see the likes of Raila Odinga joining hands, and they agreeing that there should be a national dialogue, and Raila actually said there should be a national dialogue. We can say the deputy president saying that let's give dialogue a chance, basically meaning the president has got a cloud of people around him, so he's not isolated. The fact that he is speaking probably on behalf of government is at the level, at this level, we need to have one voice. Probably when I speak or another person close to him speaks might say something different. So I think in a war situation, there should be one captain that gives orders. So if orders are coming from different barrels, we might have a conflict. So the fact that the president speaks, the fact that the president is seen to be taking charge does not mean that he is isolated. Okay. My final comment is to Kenyans. We've got one country called Kenya. And this country is doing very great. It's one of the greatest countries in Africa. It's good that we are taking charge. I saw a legislator from Ghana comparing Kenya to Ghana and says how Kenya is progressive, but the youths are very keen to look at how things are running, which is very good. We're actually giving ourselves an image. Our youths have actually given us an image that you cannot just sit and see government running. I've seen Nigerians also saying the same. But the fact that we can do that does not mean that then we destroy the country. There should be a point, when a vehicle is having high velocity, there's a point where you've got a brakes. I think with the good olive branch that has been extended by the opposition and the government to the youth, I think it is time for us to sit now and say, okay, well, we've reached this level. Can we do some braking and think about how we can rescue this country? Okay. If we do not think about how we rescue this country, even a vehicle that is going at a very high velocity, when there's a bend, it might overturn. So it is time that we need to start looking at this country now in holistic value and holistic view. And my call will still remain. Let the youth have their leaders now. Okay. It is time now that they should have leaders who can even then converse their issues with government. Thank you. Okay,
you disagree with that issue of course
getting leaders? Like I said, the youth will have their leaders at a time when they deem fit and proper to use these leaders and to front them for this kind of national conversation. As per now, the youth have said we are okay with the spaces where we are having this conversation. If you want this conversation, you can comfortably get to those spaces. That has been proven by the president joining the space. And nothing happened. There was a conversation and there was a lot of concessions before and after that conversation. I mean, as on my remarks is, I think I agree, we will have a country. We were born here, we were raised here, and we have only one country. We will leave it to the next generation. One of the things that I keep on agitating for, they need to have a logical conclusion on the issues that are happening. Well, we have things that we really can see that are very logical, which will not yield into a conclusion that is required. But even as we have that, one of the things we need to tell a political class, that is, as you reach out to extend your hand for a dialogue, you cannot invite people for dialogue at your own terms. It's quite important to identify the structure, the format agreed across by every stakeholder in that dialogue. We must know who is the mediator to this particular dialogue, who is guiding, what is the accountability of the outcome of this dialogue. Then, what is the feedback mechanism to hold these particular proceedings and the outcome of this particular dialogue accountable. So, for this, I think this is what we're asking. We must also speak to a generation and say, be very careful that at this particular point, we do not further an interest of a political class. People who have got grievances in this political system would want to take advantages of this particular platform where people are protesting to further their own interests. So we must separate what are the national issues and what are the issues that are political, that are surrounding between a political disagreement. When we find that, then we are able to hold our leaders to account and have a conversation that will lead to a national conversation with returns.
All right. They're saying anguka nayo. Well, this has been State of the Nation. Thank you so much, Titus Lote, MP Kachiliba, and Daniel Orogo, political analyst, for helping us navigate through some of the tough discussions that we've had, especially with the latest actions or pronouncements that we've had from the President and the former Prime Minister yesterday. And thank you so much for your time at TV47. Before we go on a break, and because the main discussion yesterday was about the IEBC and the assenting into law of the IEBC bill, it is only fair that at least we spend some time and take a look at what the IEBC bill is all about. It features on the front pages, but also our journalists at the TV47 newsroom were kind enough to do a story on this. Let's see that story before the break.
The IEBC Amendment Bill.
The signing of the IEBC Amendment Bill 2024 into law by President William Ruto on Tuesday, in the presence of a section of Azimio leaders and their allies, sets the stage for putting in place the selection panel, a crucial body of 9 members set to pick IEBC commissioners, which President Ruto pledged to implement in line with the NADCO report recommendations, midwifed by Azimio and Kenya Kwanza dialogue teams.
Today's assent of the IEBC Amendment Bill therefore marks a significant step in the actualization of one of the recommendations of NADCO and testifies to our country's ability to navigate difficult, complex, and sometimes divisive issues that could undermine our national cohesion, undermine our stability and security if we leave it unattended.
Ghosts of the past returned to haunt the signing ceremony, which was kept by Azimio principals Eugene Wamalwa, who declined to append his signature to the final report. Also missing Wamadha Karua, Jeremiah Kioni, and Joshua Jakoya. Azimio leaders Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka firing a warning shot on the yet-to-be reconstituted IEBC.
In the last elections, the whole world was stunned when we saw an electoral commission that was completely divided. Some saying one thing, others saying one thing. You may be happy that, the other group ruled in my favor. But what example are we showing the world as a country?
We made it very clear that both you, Mr. President, Mr. Raila Odinga, the Prime Minister, will have to agree on, perhaps most importantly, on who becomes the chair of the new IEBC. That principle of consultation, it is expected of us to even fast track the other 8. They have to be juxtaposed by the reality of the country and this new revolt. If we are not careful, all of us will get thrown out by the Gen Zs because they say we have come of age.
President Ruto is required by law to gazette 9 members, as recommended by the NADCO team, instead of 7, to sit in the selection panel. The 9 members will be made up of 2 persons nominated by the Parliamentary Service Commission from the majority and minority party, 3 persons from the political parties liaison committee, the Law Society of Kenya, the Law Society of Kenya, and the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, while the Inter-Religious Council will be given 2 slots. According to the law, the selection panel, once gazetted, will receive applications from qualified persons 7 days after appointment and publish their names. Once shortlisting and interviews are done, the panel will select 2 persons for the chairperson and 9 members qualified to be members to the president. The president is expected to pick 1 person as chair and 6 as commissioners. The president will then forward the list of nominees to the National Assembly for approval. Once approved, the President will appoint the chairperson of IEBC and the commissioners within 7 days, ensuring compliance with 2/3 gender rule and regional balance.